Welcome to Category Dominators. It's a new series where we talk with some of those talented founders and CEOs in the cloud ecosystem. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with Christina Cacioppo, the dynamic CEO and co-founder of Vanta, a powerhouse in security and compliance automation, helping thousands of companies simplify and centralize their security practices. Christina has scaled Vanta with discipline, vision, and calm intensity, quietly building one of the most trusted platforms in enterprise security. Welcome, Christina. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, Christina, can you just take a few minutes and tell us about you? I mean, we know about your bio. We're going to come to that. I'm curious about you. Just where'd you come from and what, early experiences that might have led to you becoming this incredibly successful founder that you look back on and say, those were seminal moments in my directional flow to creating a really tremendous company. I'm super curious about that. I think our audience would be too.
Yeah, I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, proud Midwesterner, big college football fan. I joke college football is definitely my most problematic fave as of now because it's kind of, I don't know, NIL paying the players is like a little better, but cool. But anyway, grew up in the era where we all just loved college football and didn't think twice about it. Daughter of two professors who kind of grew up on the Ohio State campus, hence college football. Very much a Buckeye.
I was going to ask you, are you sure you're a Buckeye fan?
Definitely a Buckeye. Grew up on that campus.
Just, guessing.
Buckeyes on the shelf behind me. Yep.
That giveaway.
My parents, I loved their jobs, and I kind of thought all adults love their jobs. I think that was actually really formative in a way. You don't know when you're 7 years old, but kind of when you're 17 or 27, you think back on. My parents loved us too, loved their kids, but they just I don't know, they were really into their jobs. Jobs were things you liked. And I think that was great actually to grow up around.
What would you take away from parents that are professors other than innately high IQ? What would that be?
I think there's a curiosity. There was they're social scientists. They're not scientists, but social science. So you have a hypothesis and it's messy and you test it with people and then but you see what happens. And I think you can just go do that, to use the meme, but you can. Again, I think you're working on something you care about, and that's the default expectation. And so, part and parcel is you need to go find the thing you care about, but it exists. It can be done.
So, okay, your parents are social scientists.
Yep.
You end up in the nerdiest world on planet Earth other than maybe rocket science, which is, in some ways cool.
That one sounds so cool. Yeah. Yep.
You're a Midwestern kid.
Mm-hmm.
Your parents are social scientists. You end up in compliance automation. Between then and here, there's an interesting story.
Again, my family was great. Columbus, Ohio was great. I wanted to get the hell out at age 16, 17, 18. And so I got as far as I could, which was Northern California. Went to Stanford, which was great in lots of ways. And I think, and again, part of also growing up in Columbus, Ohio is I read stories about people in garages in Silicon Valley. I think it was kind of around probably 99, 2000 when Steve Jobs was really starting to hit at Apple. I think I read 5 Apple biographies. I read every Apple biography my local library had. And so there was a part of the allure of California and, again, Mountain View garages or whatever was very real.
It didn't freak you out that Apple almost went into business 10 times before they became huge?
See, okay, so it's also daughter of professors. I always had a Mac. I've never owned a PC. I've basically never used a PC in my life. Kind of joking, but kind of serious. Because what would happen is they would have computers at work and when they'd get a new one, their old one would come home and it'd be their home computer. And then I would get their old home computer. So I actually always had my own computer and it was always a Mac because it was the passed down, 5 levels.
So the allure, the romance of creation and innovation of the Valley kind of drew you like a moth to the flame.
I think so. And then I think, I kind of had this do I want to be a professor? And the answer was no, but I was a little confused because I just understood being a professor so well. And to me, it's not this prestigious smart people thing. It's what my parents do. It's totally understandable. So spent some amount of undergrad thinking I wanted to do that. And then at the end, I think I had the good sense to realize adults could do different things with their lives, did a bunch of design work. Long story short, my first job, I just got absurdly lucky and joined Union Square Ventures in New York. So early stage VC firm. When I joined, it was basically 3 partners and me. It was probably 8 people at the firm when I left. It is now much larger, but got to spend 2 years talking to founders every day, all day. And it was great. It was incredible. I kind of decided at the end I wanted to go build stuff. I didn't want to be an investor, but I cannot say enough great things about that period and the guys I work for and like that whole opportunity.
Those guys are so unself-promotional. They're so under the radar. But if you look at them pound for pound, you have to say that is a quality organization.
Oh, their returns are incredible. Yeah.
No, I mean, as you know, started a small venture firm. I do believe that smaller in many cases is better. You're not encumbered by all the BS of managing a large organization. Just spend all your time on founders and helping them be successful.
and that is, I think it's still true of USC, but definitely the firm I joined. It was a firm Fred and Brad wanted to run. And that firm did not have a bunch of hierarchy and like young investors climbing the ranks and trying to like do the things to make VP, joking and not. They didn't want any of that.
You have the allure of the basement, Steve Jobs, Hewlett-Packard garage, and then you kind of whipsaw, go to New York to do VC. Mm-hmm. Did you see something in your Stanford campus life that was like, I don't know if I want to do this just yet? How'd that happen?
Two things. One, I think Palo Alto can be a wonder. It is like, if you want to live in a suburb, it's probably the best suburb in the world to live. If I was 21, I don't want to live in a suburb.
And the city, San Francisco wasn't the same city.
San Francisco was not the same thing.
It wasn't the thing it is now, yeah.
It wasn't the thing. Yelp was there, and Yelp would throw these outrageous parties that, I don't know, I just read about on Yelp. I didn't.
Yeah. And Salesforce, and that was pretty much it.
That was pretty much it. And my year, everyone interviewed for jobs right before, literally right before the financial crash. So there were all these jobs in New York that, then halfway disappeared a year later, but we didn't know that when we were all interviewing for jobs.
You're talking to these founders at Union Square. You decide you don't want to geek out and chase them for money. You want to go be one.
Yeah.
So from there, you went down the product path. Can you tell us a little bit about that? What you picked up? What were you looking for? What were you seeking? What are the things that you soaked that then led to Vanta? Very, very curious about the details of that journey, if you don't mind sharing.
Totally. It's funny because I had forgotten this, of course, but someone reminded me in the past couple months. Fred Wilson told me to go be a PM because he was like, look, it's kind of that's where the center is. They make the decisions. I don't think he and I don't agree with PM as mini CEO, but it's the closest. There's something there. And he backed a bunch of PMs that become founders and CEOs. So he's like, go be a PM. And I sort of stupidly first didn't take his advice because I think I was just stubborn. And so what I did was I actually didn't take a job. I'd saved my bonus for a year and I lived off my bonus for a year and taught myself to code. And I built a bunch of stuff no one has ever heard of. And it was both great and terrible. It was great because it was absurdly creative. The world was my oyster, and I could and I learned this skill that I both really wanted to learn. And I'm really glad I know how to do and actually enjoy. It was stressful because I didn't have a job, mostly didn't have health insurance. I mostly didn't tell my mom that. I actually told my parents I was on sabbatical because they're academics and they understood that concept. They kind of found me out when they're like, oh, but okay, when does your sabbatical end? When do you go back to your job? And I had to be like, I'm not going to go back. I quit. There's no going back.
Held back to you on that.
And they were like, oh shit, do you have food? Do you have health insurance? And you're like, kind of.
Love it.
But I did that for a bit, learned a ton. Some now I can write Python sort of lessons and some managing my own psychology lessons and some oh man, life outside a bubble lessons, and learned a lot, but did not start a company through this because I think part of it too is I'd seen so many ideas come through Union Square and what it took to make something work and not, that I had this appreciation for how rare truly great ideas is. Probably over appreciation. I was probably overly focused on it, but there's something there. Anyway, so I ended up finally, 2 years later, like a doofus, taking Fred's advice and took a product management role at Dropbox. And that was kind of my first time in a real company. Right? 5-person venture funds are companies, but they're not.
That was an exciting time at Dropbox, though.
It was an exciting time. It was Harlem Globetrotters of recruiting. It was the talent density was insane.
It was unbelievable. Drew is a special founder. You had a great board. You had Sequoia to Index, really phenomenal backers. It's interesting that you chose Dropbox because if you look at it clinically, you bet, well, what are they going to do? They're going to compete against Google Drive and stuff that Microsoft's willing to give for free, share space. And so what made you choose Dropbox? And I'm also curious whether Dropbox Paper was your idea and how that gestational process occurred. Tell us about that feast.
Yeah. Okay. So to that, I had all those thoughts about Dropbox. I chose it because of the people. It wasn't the product. It wasn't the I mean, Merck was great, but honestly, it was I had some good friends from undergrad, someone I built a bunch of stuff with before had gone there and was really happy. And this tiny startup called HackPad that was making a collaborative document editor that I tried to get USV to fund and they didn't, had just sold to Dropbox. And I'd also talked to them about working for them. And so HackPad, for those who don't know, became Dropbox Paper. And so I didn't end up working them at the USV because the USV didn't fund them. It's probably the right call. I didn't end up working for them afterward because I was like too stubborn and wanted to go do my own thing. But I ended up working with them at Dropbox and we made paper.
Love it. Okay, so what happened? So you get this acquisition, they assign you to the company. Is it that the founder wasn't, long for Dropbox, or what was the dynamic behind that?
It was two, really strong technical co-founders who weren't and didn't want to be PMs, especially at the time. And one kind of more played a PM role over time. But it was mostly a hey, we need a PM. Neither of these two founders want to do it. And most Dropbox PMs at that time were of a different archetype. They're really good at what they do, but they're like the type of PM you need if you're, for example, scheduling a mass migration of 9 quadrillion billion gigabytes of files off of AWS onto a hosted data center. If you gave me that project, I couldn't even get it out of the gate. I would fail at it. But the Dropbox Paper project was go figure out what people want and try to build it and try to get users. And it's kind of that's what I spent my last 2 years doing. That's what I spent the 2 years prior talking to people about doing. Let me go try. And so it was kind of a different PM archetype.
But that's a risky move. I guess that's what I'm kind of getting at. It's a risky move when you're in Dropbox. The core business is this gigantic thing that owned the world. It was you guys thumped Box so fast. It wasn't even funny. Just in terms of growth and critical mass and market values, $10 billion IPO. It was pretty wild. And the talent density, to your point, was absurd. Drew might have been one of the best recruiters of that era.
Yep.
And it was really kind of extraordinary to see them just carve out space for themselves in a commodity shitty space, right? If you look at it clinically, you'd be why would anybody do a company there? And there were worse ideas that turned out to be huge, but I just find that fascinating. And then you inside of Dropbox, all of a sudden you're no, I'm going to do this paper thing that no one else is caring about. And that's risky because if you're not working on the core stuff, you might get relegated to the basement. What drove you to take that, to bet your career at Dropbox on a nascent product category?
Yeah, okay, I think two things. One, I didn't have much of a career to speak of at that point. And I'm joking, I'm not. But it was like I'd done this VC thing and then I hadn't been employed for 2 years and then what the hell,
Right. Not a lot to lose.
Yeah, I cut joking, but not. That's how it felt. I think the other part was our equivalent of the basement, we're actually the floor up, which is cool. But we were the cool startup kids on Startup Island. And we didn't care about everybody else. And they didn't care about us, but we're we're going to be bigger than you are. Dropbox Paper is going to have more users than Dropbox. You just wait. And so we got to hang out on Startup Island.
You had a lot more autonomy.
So much more. Because no one cared, to your point, no one cared. And it was awesome. Until it wasn't. As it goes.
Flame out, nobody notices. If you crush it, it's whoa, where'd that come from?
Yeah.
All right, well, what drove the success of Dropbox Paper?
Oh, well, oof. My oof is one of the engineering managers I worked with who's so good, talked about this. At some point he came to me and was hey, Christina, are you trying to build, with Dropbox Paper, are you trying to build an art house critical favorite or a box office smash? And I, of course, said box office smash. And I think what we built with Dropbox Paper was an art house critical favorite. By that, I mean, at this point, actually, Dropbox's office was on Brannan Street. And so we talked about our ICP, although we didn't know the word ICP. We talked about our ICP as some Brannan Street startups. Because it was literally startups in Soma and Brannan Street. And startups in Soma and Brannan Street loved paper, loved it. And we would get love letters from them, these really nice emails that were gravely detailed, and it was amazing. And there were not a million of them. I never figured out how to transition, bottle whatever it is that the Brannan Street startups so much about paper and kind of distribute it to the masses. And we would, when it came to the masses, we'd run up against Google Docs and we'd end up saying things but you can type emojis in your documents and there's stickers in the comment threads. Don't you want to switch your whole team onto this new product? And people were no, it's a terrible pitch. I don't. And we kind of never figured it out. And actually one of the great joys of the last couple of years has been watching Notion figure it out. So there was a thing there, but I did not take it personally. Like, I didn't figure it out.
I don't know that the enabling components, let's just say, technically speaking, were available then. What is this, 2016, 2015? It was a different world. Notion has, you got to give them credit. I mean, what they did and how they did it and this whole bottoms up thing, that's a real company.
Totally.
Ivan's amazing.
It's great. Ivan's the best.
It is incredible. Okay, so here's the real question of the day. You go to the VC thing, you do Stanford, you go do Dropbox paper. Dropbox is a user-facing, cool thing that everyone loved. It was so easy to use. It's like a data center in your bone, right? It was great.
Right.
But, I mean, what the hell? Risk, compliance, management, SOC 2. You couldn't go from something cooler than Dropbox to a nerdier thing like Vanta. It's such a departure. I can see like going from Dropbox to some other collaboration thing like an Asana or a Slack or whatever. But you're going into something extremely esoteric. That is the most fascinating move to me.
Okay, I would not have guessed this, but I think it makes sense in retrospect. Okay, so partially to your like collaboration tool thing and my, like what was the value prop of Dropbox paper? I was never SPM. I was never able to articulate that, and that was not a good move as PM. That was like me not doing very well at my job. Collaboration software, I just got I'm joking and not, but like collaboration software, I just got burned out on. And it was like, again, and I actually in like trying to come up with a startup idea, spent 3 or 4 months talking to people about Slack and knowledge bases. And you're like, there's something here. And we could talk. And I just got to like, there is something here and someone else isn't gonna figure it out. Because I can't quite put my finger on it. And either you need to be able to, or I need to be able to, and I need to find an idea. I can like, you should use my product for this reason. And I don't need to rely on saying words like emojis and stickers and comment threads and kind of sounding like a crazy person. So like there is so much in team collaboration that I think I am like not, I don't know, for whatever reason, like not constitutionally the person to do. There's many things I actually like about Vanta and security compliance. One of them is the value prop is so clear. The initial value prop, which is a value prop for startups to this day, is pay us X dollars and we will help you build your security and demonstrate it to an auditor and get you a piece of paper that you can then use to open up new markets and new segments and go make 10X dollars.
How did you even think that this was going to be a thing coming from Dropbox paper? That's what I'm after. Like, it's so different. It's 100 miles different. It's 100 miles away.
It is, but like one part of launching paper was finding out we couldn't launch because we did not have SOC 2 compliance.
Ah, there it is.
And I was not smart enough in this moment to be like, oh, I can fix this problem. I was like, what are you talking about? Like, what is compliance? Why do I have to give up my engineering team for a year? You just told me to get users and then told me I can't talk to any Dropbox user. Like, this is why working at big companies sucks. Like a run screaming from the room. Truly. Was not smart enough at all. Was just like, well, how are you going to make paper take off if you can't give it to anybody with a Dropbox account? Because they have a Dropbox contract that says SOC to it. But like, come on. Feels like Kafka thing here. And then I think like it was basically 6 months later, I heard about compliance again, but there was like a prepared mind thing. There was like, wait, I remember that. That was nonsense. What was that thing again? And it made me pay more attention to basically a side comment in a like interview I was doing than I would have otherwise.
Your humility is so ridiculously refreshing. I mean, who doesn't love these AI founders? They're so much fun. It's just a riot. You can't even contemplate what these people are doing. But there's also a lot of hubris. And so for somebody like you who's actually built a real business, so humble, talking about how the daughter of college professors isn't that smart, don't believe you. And I'm not trying to flatter you here. I just think it's just incredibly refreshing to talk to somebody who's been, built a unicorn from scratch and still talking about how they just weren't smart enough and clever enough. So here you are. You decide you're going to go.
I'd also say just on that one, thank you. 2, spending 2 years interacting with Founder Street, it did make me be like, whoa, it's so easy to be obnoxious. And like, I'm sure this person doesn't think they were obnoxious, but like, wow, are they obnoxious?
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of them that are like, how far are you going to go acting like this? Can you just be an adult for a few minutes, please? Just be a person. I'm still interested in this kind of early formative days. So you had to have studied the market. But at your time, you had Calibra doing this. You had all these other companies out there. They're like, listen, I'll give, you give me your data. I'll make sure you're GDPR compliant and I'll give you a report. You can show it to the GDPR people. There was no California privacy law. The US still doesn't have its act together in 2025, incredibly, on data privacy. So you must have seen that this was going to be a bigger pain point, but it was not exactly an uncrowded space. It was pretty hotly contested. You had people that were bigger than you when you stepped into it.
Yeah, kind of. Okay, so yes, you had, actually, I think the really interesting thing here is you had all these security companies that when their marketing pages were all about compliance. Do you remember Evident.io, or what we now call CSPM? All their marketing was around compliance. Their product wasn't that. And so there was a little bit of like, man, if kind of every security company has at least one product or feature page about compliance, but then they're like, it must kind of work. And yet their product doesn't do that. Just imagine if you built a product that did that.
It actually does that.
You like actually did it. And you're like, it sounds kind of dumb, but honestly, that was part of it. Part of it too was like, yes, there was a bunch of like alphabet soup of compliance acronyms, but no one touched SOC 2. And SOC 2 is the closest thing to like the default starter standard. And when we went and investigated why, it was because it was like totally open-ended and bespoke, and you had to start with a consultant, and then the consultant took you on a like mountaintop hike where you like look within yourself and think about what your security should be. And, it was just like impossible. And it was impossible if you'd never done it. And again, we were kind of, I think, dumb in the right ways, like naive in the right ways to be like, well, that seems crazy. Also, there's all these security best practices. I don't know, for a small company the first time, can you just codify a lot of this stuff? And you go ask the consultants, and the consultants say, definitely not. Because no, like my job of like mountaintop, exploration is so important. And you're like, is it really though? Fast forward to the end, you can codify a lot with best practices, not 100%, and it changes as the company grows. But when you're just getting started, best practices can get you pretty far.
Interesting. So you thought about automating behaviors, codifying behaviors, as opposed to just data in libraries.
Yes, that is true too. Yes. And I think, again, it was kind of walking around and talking to companies that had gone through this process and been like, well, we had to change a bunch of stuff, but it was worth it because I wanted that like 10x at the, end. So like, you kind of put any hoop in front of me and I'll jump through it because I want the outcome so badly. And so it was like, oh, okay. Well, I'll try not to like ask you to jump through too many hoops, but okay, game on.
Okay, so tell us the early days. What are the decisions that you made really early? I know you did a bunch of homework. You're a curious person. We talked about that. And then you looked at the buyer pain. You talked to a bunch of customers. You validated the idea. Let's talk about, going from there to company formation and financing and getting a team together. What are the key moments there that were like, oh my God, this sucks. This is awful. It's not going to happen. And some of the things that were incredibly tailwindy.
Yeah. Okay. So one thing, and I like have my own soapbox about this now, but usually a startup problem, it's not technical risk, it's market risk. And yet anyone who can code just code or like codes first. And it's like they're trying to de-risk technical risk. And it's like, no, if you're halfway decent / you have any traction, you can build whatever you want. That's not the issue. The issue is, does anyone want what you just built?
Right.
And so for, co-founders that could code, we didn't let ourselves write any code, and we built everything in spreadsheets and did everything manually. And like, it sucked, and the work is really monotonous, and it wasn't fun. But you know what? Understood it backwards and forward, and you get on the other side, and you're like, I know precisely what to build. And my soapbox is, I think more people should do this, especially people who don't have to because they can code. But again, the frame is like, there's not technical risk; it's market risk. Fix that.
But there wasn't a lot of budget around. In the EU, you worried about GDPR. You're worried about compliance. And you had to have, as you say, that piece of paper. But there wasn't a big wallet share. So how did you know there was actually going to be a market that would pay and it wasn't going to be DIY, do it yourself?
Yeah. So to that, like literally if you'd asked me in 2017, I have some of this actually, these emails with YC, like I would have told you it was $10 million revenue max. It was 100 million globally, and that was some like pretty generous multiplication.
You had to squint. That's my point.
You had to squint. And so our theory at the time was like, look, but we can get to 10 on this, and then it'll be something useful, and then we'll expand to other stuff. But like, wow, we got to build a second product fast because like this thing's not, let's talk two things, like not going to be that good. Everybody else, I would say, was like, no, it's a $10 million market, and you can maybe get to $1 million. And I think one of the great surprises is like, no, turns out there's actually hundreds of millions of dollars.
But how did you even get this idea financed or hire 10 people if you were going to have this $1 million opportunity? That's fascinating.
And it was like, we got to get out of SOC 2 fast.
Copy that.
We can't build a SOC 2 factory forever. Turns out you can actually build a SOC 2 factory forever. I still don't want to do that. I don't think that we're doing a Vanta, but like SOC 2 factories, much better businesses.
So you went and registered for YC.
Yep.
Even though you knew you were likely addressing a tiny market, why did YC accept you?
Oh, I don't know if that's them. The reason we wanted to do it was because...
I'm sure they told you.
like joking and not, prior to Vanta, the last thing I sold was Girl Scout cookies. Didn't know what the hell I was doing. And YC seemed like it would, we talked about it actually as our VP of sales. It was like, they'll introduce us to customers. They will like tell us when we're like messing it up on them. Like it'll just help with the whole like Girl Scout cookie to software fails transition. Which I actually think it did. Not in the ways I expected, but I do think it did.
Every person I know that's successful, self-made, was kind of a hustler as a kid. Most of them. Their parents made them go out and stand on a street corner. You go sell some stuff. And by the way, you're going to pay me for the lemonade.
Babysitters Club, babysitter like flyers with like repair off
or
thing.
paper. You had a paper route. You had something. So then you went out and sold this idea to the VCs after YC.
We graduated from YC. We were at I didn't actually really know what MRR ARR was at the time, really, in retrospect. I thought I did. But we kind of went like zero to like $120,000 in 3 months. And so felt like we were like on top of the world. Like that was like incredible, which it both was and dear God, it wasn't. No, but both are true. And so went around and did the like post-demo day, fundraise in 7 days, insanity. I immediately got sick afterward, but it's fine, it's over. I remember actually and I still feel like this, even when financing processes are going really well, they feel terrible. Just terrible.
Painful.
And that's going the best thing about. And actually, seed process went very well. I remember when we got the first term sheet, it's from a firm we didn't really want. Whatever, didn't end up taking it. But I remember like almost crying when I got that email because I was just like, okay, I didn't mess this up. We have an option. I don't want that option. I want to go get a better one, but like something's going to happen. And it's funny that doesn't go away. Even when things are going real well in a financing.
It's nice when other people agree with you that what you're doing is actually possibly interesting.
Yes. It's funny, actually. And the Vanta has taught me to take a lot of things less personally than I used to take them. And I think I'm generally pretty okay at that. Financing, I just can't. I get so pissed off when someone is like, well, I don't think it's going to be a market. You're like, I'll show you. And it does,
Let's talk about that for a second. How'd you get in front of Sequoia and how'd you convince them? They're tough.
Yeah, well, I didn't for a while. I had, I think, 2 meetings with them, like one basically right after YC and one a year or 2 after that, where they're like, nice small business you think is venture-backed. Like, good luck over there. And at Sequoia, so they were like slightly more polite, but like also not really. Like they basically just say that to you. And I was like, okay, fine, I'll show you. And so when we went out to raise the A, we raised the A at 10 million or ARR, which was a little unconventional. But actually, when I like made my list of people to talk to, Sequoia wasn't on it for this reason. Because it was like, look, I talked to you guys twice. You think I'm an idiot. I don't think I'm an idiot, but like, agree to disagree. Like, we'll both find our paths in the universe. And it was a good friend who was like, you're being an idiot. Just call them, And we ended up going with them. But again, did not expect it.
Okay, so the early people that bet on you, who were they and what did they see?
We had a bunch of really great individual angels. And I think, honestly, it's a combo of like people who we'd worked with, they knew us. And they were probably like, compliance, what the hell are you doing? But like, I'll bet on you, right? It was like definitionally founder, not idea, or founder, not market. So there's like a set of that. Then actually there were a set of idea people who we didn't know and ended up being awesome. One person in this, Mike Stoppelman, who was the VP of engineering at Yelp for about a decade, he was like trawling the demo day pitches and watched ours on video and emailed and was like, I built everything you're talking about at Yelp.
And hated every minute.
I hated every minute of it, but I did everything. He ended up being like one of the like most useful angel investors. I've had other founders ask me why. I mean, I think a lot of it was he had just stepped away from Yelp. And so it was someone who had this like really intense 24/7 job for a long time. And then all of a sudden didn't and hadn't quite figured out how to turn off. So you just asked him anything and you got a reply in 4 seconds. Every startup he'd meet with, he'd be like, do you need to talk to? Here, meet Christina. And he would just intro immediately. #1 BDR. He was incredible.
Love it. All right, so you get to 10 million, now you get Sequoia. But you're still in a market with a lot of DIY, TAM's still kind of small, you're kind of grinding, scratching, and clawing. Bunch of companies in there. And you could approach it from databases and the Calibra approach and kind of the the reporting, and there's a lot of integrations that are kind of painful, but you could lock in into some of these big things like banks and some of these other verticals started to embrace the category. And so the question I have is like, when you look at the early days, you kind of just started to pull away from some people. You end up being, I think you're twice the size of your nearest competitor or close now. Did you pivot? Was there some industry thing that shifted that you tapped into? What'd you do early to kind of build some velocity and break away from the pack?
Yeah, it was tough. I mean, I think not to be total founder, but to be total founder, I don't know, we started this thing and then in kind of 2020, especially, everyone is sort of sitting at home bored on Zoom and decides to start a company. And I think there were a lot of like knockoffs that started, and there was a lot of Vanta knockoffs, and there was an era. Some of them moved, especially at the time, moved really fast. And we were not moving fast at the time. And I think deeply learned that lesson. So just in the pull away, like part of why we all like software and tech so much is it's so fast moving. Fucking brutal on the other side, because it's so much like, what have you done for me lately? And I think for a while we were like, oh, but we're trying to do so many things for you lately, but we haven't actually done that much. I mean, it feels like a lot. We were trying so hard, and yet like the output just wasn't there. And I think a lot of and that kind of like opened up space for some of the knockoffs to get a bit more oxygen than we should have. And then I think it was just like getting our own house in order and being like, okay, what have we done for you lately? Well, we ship 4 times a day, every day. And here's what we do. And we do these things and we build with customers and we go, go, go.
So all of a sudden, you're not one of the only players in the space. You got 10 other companies. I remember. And all of a sudden, it's a chaotic space. You're like, why? That still seems like a small TAM. So you guys got caught flat-footed thinking you were going to just own this little space that you guys were inventing.
Yeah, you're like, no one cares about this space. You all think it's
all of a sudden, you got to be
right?
like, oh shit, there's a bunch of people in my living room that I don't want here. How'd you rally the team? Because sometimes people kind of get lulled to sleep and then they get into a rhythm that's not the right rhythm, and you got to cattle prod without everybody quitting, and you got to make a culture change on the fly. Well, tell us about that.
It took a couple tries. Okay, and actually I think we did it, and it was different go-to-market and EPD, like R&D. Go-to-market got it because they were in the field and they were getting asked, what have you done for me lately all the time? And, like, were there ways we could communicate better and equip them? Like, totally, right? But seller confidence is very real. Matters on the way up, matters on the way down. And I think actually we tried a bunch of stuff, but one of pep talks and teardowns and all sorts of stuff. Also, our competitors were really good at competitive intel on us, and we were just like too Midwestern to do it on them. And that was like this weird information asymmetry thing. The thing that actually worked was we took a couple sellers, really Steve, our CRO, did this. Made that, all credit to her, made them overlay. So they were just in every single competitive deal attached to a specific competitor. They, over time, new business, existing business, learned strengths, learned weaknesses, got to message test, got to try. They got confident. Then other AEs started pulling them into deals. That got the AEs confident. And in the background, we're shipping more and more. But like that, and then we got the like confidence swing on the way up that we still have, but turning that around was brutal. I think on the R&D side, it was sort of a different story. It was, how do we get information from the field and from customers to engineers, PMs, and designers in both a high fidelity way that doesn't sound like complaining? And everyone's very nice and no one actually calls it complaining, right? But like, salespeople
articulation of pain.
Yeah, right. And it's not like, oh, we lost this deal because you didn't sell it right. I mean, yes, we can always sell it better, and there's always stuff there. But like, there's also a deeper message. It's like we also, don't really have the thing they want or don't really have differentiation in the way we do. Again, a bunch of stuff there. I think the thing that worked was actually like real teardowns and really understanding the state of different products with like a more clear-eyed lens. And so being like, okay, what is the differentiation here? Now, again, if we were like the best sales and marketing person in the world, how would we explain it? And like, how does that sound? Like, do I sound like I'm talking about emojis and documents?
What you guys did was you just tripled down on connectivity with customers to understand exactly what was going on with all your competitors. Where were you sitting in the market? Dispassionate examination of selves. It sounds like you had to have a lot of semi-brutal internal conversations around, look, we're staring existential crisis in the face because we might get smoked by one of these upstarts that's kind of moving faster than us. Now we got to change. And you guys just dialed in the connectivity with the customers. Sounds like that was driven by Stevie. And let's talk about her for a second. There's a person that came from the mid-market of this, messaging service that we know as Twilio, right? I look at her as one of the all-time rising stars in revenue leadership. And sounds like you agree. Sounds like everybody around Vanta agrees. And I'm like, wow, what a hero. Why did you bet on her? And what do you attribute to her being successful here? Because that's an unlikely transition from a messaging thing to this esoteric security thing.
Really friggin' smart. She's really friggin' rigorous. and she's really friggin' competitive. And I think it's like these soft things, right? And she's like an excellent sales leader, to be clear, like motivated, like all the things. But she kind of stumbled into sales. She's excellent at it, but she's also like would be excellent at kind of anything she does.
So you chose her just for the DNA of her, because her resume made no sense.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
And she's a game-changing hire. So what founders should take from this vignette, in my view, tell me if I'm right, stop hiring people based on your perception that the resume is a lock, and then not thinking about who is this person. Is this person's genetic self awesome or not? Because like I think 90% of founders just go, okay, if they've done this, this, and this, and they're 5'11" and have brown eyes, great. That's what I need. Brown-eyed 5'11". And they're not thinking about like what's under the hood. Stevie under the hood looks like a V12 to me.
Yes, she is. Yes.
That's cool that you took such a bet.
Just like there is like so much operational rigor there.
By the way, it does seem like commercial people in revenue are innately a little bit more rigorous than the enterprise people historically.
Oh, it's 100% true.
But you have to have the enterprise DNA. So she's more from being commercial where you like got to do a deal every day. There's this almost...
Well, it's funny, because her last role at Twilio was commercial, but actually over her tenure at Twilio, she spent almost all of it at enterprise.
Okay, really interesting. I thought she was doing commercial sales. Maybe I just misread that.
Just at the very end.
Okay, got it. So she had some enterprise DNA from before.
But like, I think that, actually we should ask her, but like, I think a lot of that at Twilio is due to George Hugh. He just kind of made everyone be more rigorous. But like, yes, I think in general with enterprise, it's such a different game than commercial is such a different game than down market. And down market, it's why you see so many like RevOpsy revenue leaders, because it is spreadsheet map. And then you have to manage the humans, but like so much of it is, and kind of there's a part of Vanta's business like this, and I love it.
Very interesting. You point out George Hu. That guy, if you can work for mentors like that, everything they're doing is machine-like, stoic, heads down, grind, deliver, and be methodical, instrumentation, have your data together, drive. Was that a factor in your hiring, Stevie? Was that she grew up under George Hu?
So I only halfway knew enough to know what that all meant. Now I do. I think but like so I didn't know enough to know that, but I think it was like, I could see the attributes and you're like, this is a like gas pedal on. Again, her like first thing when she came to Vanta is she made a go-to-market model based around QCs, based around quota carriers that went all the way up. And you're just like, shit, my like finance team has never done this, and this is good. And you're the sales leader. Like, okay, great, we got it. We're going.
Amazing. Okay, let's talk about no drama Vanta. I've seen you in situations where you're not happy, and I've seen you when you are happy. And I'm amazed by how classy and poised you are, and just sort of as a person. I appreciate that very much, because I do see some insanity out there. I've seen a lot of things over the 35,000 years in tech. I've seen it all. But I think of Vanta as a low drama company. Just, it's not one of these rocket ship $800 million things overnight. There's also a real merit to growing steadily and efficiently and sustainably. That's the way I view Vanta. What do you attribute that to? Is that something you've just explicitly communicated to the team? It can't be dramatic. We have a value system. Tell us how you have maintained a zero drama, at least you really appear to be a zero drama company.
We try very much. Not that we always hit it or I always hit it. I do. Okay, what do I think? I do think, again, just like seeing 2 years worth of high growth startups at USC was really helpful. Because you see a lot of stuff and you see that it's like sometimes it's good drama and sometimes it's bad drama, but you just watch it and you're watching it from the outside. And I do think I took something from that.
Well, how'd you imprint that on the rest of the company? What are you guys now? 300 employees? 400? What are you?
Oh my God, 750.
At 750? Oh my God, I'm totally out of date. 750. Okay. You've got all these characters from all the different walks of life. They could have come from anywhere and have. How do you keep everybody from being low drama? That's very important. You guys are a serious critical mass company. That's hard.
Yeah. And I do think I think our early days of every startup is also dramatic. Like we definitely had our share there. I think it was also like fundamental. That was also probably a helpful counterexample where you're like, wow, this is so much energy and so not moving the business forward. And anyway, and also like everyone's sad. Try not to model it. To your I try really hard. Again, not that I always succeed at all, but like part of it is like I try really hard because I think if I start, yelling, everyone else, it's a little permission of like, oh, this is a company where people yell. And you're like, no, it's a company where people don't yell.
Yelling is tacky.
Yeah, I make spreadsheets when I'm angry, actually. You could tell. But it's like, I'm like, must fix problem, must make spreadsheet. And it's like kind of funny and it's like a bit of a joke, but like that's my tell.
You push people out when they're volatile. What do you do? I mean, you just not tolerate it? In other words, like, what is the thing? Do you have it written on a wall somewhere?
We do try to screen for it, and like, no one, usually people aren't. Actually, it's funny. I was going to say usually people aren't volatile in the interview process. Usually people are, not in a bad way. But I do think, true to an investor that's everyone, is like, people tell you who they are pretty quickly. You just have to shut up and listen. You just have to let them talk sometimes. And I think, yeah, you just let people talk. And anyway, so there's stuff there. And then I think there's, dramatic internally. And then you got to get them out quickly. And you can do it in a nice way or in a like, we will help you glide out and find another role, but like out.
So that's a characteristic you look for when in every hire. And the rest of the leadership team knows that's a critical component of your setup at Vanta, is like, we're going to look for people like that. But how do you get people that are no drama and still passionate and committed and are willing to work harder than the next people? As you know, this is all a foot race. I mean, everything looks a foot race.
Oh, I mean, not that I think these concentric circles like overlap a little bit, but I don't think they're one for one. Like we have people who work exceedingly hard and are pretty focused on the work.
Copy that. What about board? So you don't even seem to have any board drama either. Did you select investors based on high IQ, low drama?
I have a very small board because I saw dramatic board. Again, USV saw dramatic boards. It's a 3-person board. It's me, Andrew Reed from Sequoia, and an independent. And now we've had almost 4 years together. And the board is very like, hey, here's here's actually what's going on. Here's what's working. Here's what's fucked. Like, what do you think? And it's really nice to be able to have those conversations and not have a fake conversation.
Andrew is special. He's a very intense and competitive person, but he's very well-mannered. He's a savage cyclist, is what I'm told.
Yes. Yeah.
Very competitive, like races bikes, beats people. Yeah, but he's still Mr. Cool. Did you select him for that vibe? Where you knew there was this giant brain running and this innate intensity, but he was very low drama or measured?
Yeah, that he sees himself as an investor, and he's an incredible investor. He does not see himself as an operator. Again, I'd be in board meetings where it was like clear the VC just wanted to like jump across the table and like strangle the head of sales and run the sales team. And look, they might have run a better sales team, but that was like not a helpful impulse or board meeting. Andrew, never going to be an operator, but he's going to make a ton of money as an incredible investor.
You guys have inhaled a fair bit of capital, not crazy like some of these AI starts, but a decent amount of capital, and maintaining a small board despite having multiple financings is actually not trivial.
It's a term I care about.
It's nothing to sell you. I'll take your money, but I'm not giving you a board seat for it. That's tough.
Yep.
So you're saving board seats for when you're really critical mass and need to flesh out the IPO team. You don't have to swap out VCs to go bring in a bunch of operators.
You want operational experience, get that. And I don't think you get that from VCs, largely.
No, not most of them. Many of them.
You get useful things from VCs, not telling you that. But it's not that. You get other stuff.
Yeah, that's interesting. Very interesting. So you would pass on that advice to younger founders or just founders behind you, maybe they're older or younger, that you should try to keep your board small and tight, low drama.
Yes. Because then like it's so quickly, it's like they were all kind of competitors too in this weird Silicon Valley game. And your board meeting just becomes the status game about that, not about your company. Who can say the smartest thing in front of the, Andreessen person that blah, 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 and like have them go do that on the side.
So the other day when I were riffing, we were just talking about, okay, SOC 2 compliance, game not over as we discussed earlier. You're never out of the fight, never out of the race. There's somebody else that's always going to come along. Somebody with some AI first thing is going to come up. There's probably 10 new ones because VCs have no discipline, God love them. And there's probably funding millions of next-gen Vanta, AI Vanta, whatever.
Love it every time I see it. Yeah.
It's funny. It can't help themselves. God love them, like I said. The thing I'm just wondering is thematic, how you go, okay, I've made it here. I'm worth a couple $1 billion in, market value. We're definitely an IPO candidate. We have great unit economics, solid margins, solid team, no drama. Great. But we're not there yet. How do you look at there from a big picture transcendental story arc perspective? How are you computing those scenarios?
The line in 2017, which was both, or I believed then, but also I felt a little fraudulent saying was, if you want to start a security company, I think you'd start a compliance company. I feel good saying it because I think it's very true. I felt a little fraudulent being like, but we look like a compliance company and we mostly do compliance. And it was like, but someday we'll do security. And, anyway, there was kind of that duality. And look, like, 6, 7 years on, like, we're doing more and more security. And compliance is a big part of the business. It's important to our customers. We will always do it. And I think we have earned the right to build more and more security workflows for our customers. We connect with all their systems. We're visualizing all this data and checking, running all these compliance checks continuously 24/7, 365. And it's all for this compliance use case. And again, actually pretty good business. To your point, we now, I think, are earning the right to do that for more and more security use cases. And so there's a platform story there, but it's a security platform story that actually starts with compliance, or compliance is the wedge in. And again, on some level, we talked about this in 2017. This was how are you going to make the market bigger? You're going to build security tools. You're going to ... And it's really rewarding to be at a point at the company now where you're oh, we're actually doing that.
Well, the beauty for you is it seems like the customers give you so much data that you ultimately default into becoming a system of record. And that's interesting. That's hard in security, as you know. There's a lot of whack-a-mole, point solutions, millions of them. And then if you kind of go, well, if you actually have a cheat code for ingesting gigantic amounts of data the customer willingly gives you, then you could do more. And then your existential purpose becomes a component of the larger opportunity, which is what it sounds like you've done. A lot of people go, well, my existential thing is the thing I got to ride as long as I can. And you've already gotten to critical mass there. And now that looks like it's going to be a feature in this larger construct.
And I do think, again, even watching the last 10 years of technology history, it's most of these enterprise companies, or very, very few, are durable and sustaining with only one product. So that is true. And then the longer it takes you to build the second product, the worse you are at it, because so much is calcified around the first.
In your case, the second product almost manifested itself from the first product. Was that the intention all along?
The intention was oh shit, I hope our customers say something useful. But we didn't know what it was going to be. So kind of. But that's more dumb luck than strategy, I think.
Christina, this is such a pleasure talking to you. I want to ask you one other question. When you look at founders, let's just say we were in a room with 5,000 founders.
Oh man.
What would you tell them they should really care about in the early goings of their company building? And just, what would be your parting advice to them?
Early goings, I don't know, we're pre-10 in revenue.
Yeah. I mean, it could even be formation stage.
There's so many things that are playing startups to come startup. I think Paul Graham calls it, and I think it's a really good phrase. The only thing that matters until you've done this is building something lots of people want. Incorporating doesn't matter. Raising money doesn't matter. Hiring people doesn't matter. Your fundamental problem is build something people want. And everything else, I mean, not to say you shouldn't do some of those things, but do them and wrap them. They don't actually matter that much. Don't micro optimize. I think once you have something people want, then you can talk a lot about culture and a lot about how you hire and all of these things. I think before then, it's just what did you get up today to do to build something that someone wanted to pay you for?
So many companies historically have been I'm just going to hire millions of people and we'll confuse activity with progress and we'll get to 10 million and we'll have 100 people and burn $100 million in revenue and pretend we have a business, but they didn't really validate the market.
No, it's so that, you feel very cool briefly on Twitter for a couple of days and then you just have months of pain. I think actually the other thing, just to be totally salty here, is run toward the pain.
I have to quote Slootman. I always quote the guy. He's such a character. And he just said to me one time, you'll love this. He said to me hey, strategy is bullshit.
It is bullshit.
He's total bullshit. He's the market changes every 5 minutes. Why would you think about strategy all day long? The strategy is what you're doing when you're selling into pain. And you identify the customer pain, you build more stuff to address that pain. And then you go, what else? Oh, you got knee pain? How about shoulder pain? I'll go address your shoulder pain too. Just Advil, but it's shoulder pain and knee pain.
Totally. The whiteboard strategy thing, you can have some hypotheses, but who knows and who cares? Go figure it out.
I love it. What a pleasure seeing you. Thank you so much for your time. I think people will get a lot out of this. And I just have to say in closing, I genuinely respect the zero drama, winning, but without a cost of human selves. You guys don't rip people up. You don't trash people. You don't character assassinate people. There's a goodness to you. I can feel the Midwesterner in you. And I genuinely appreciate it, admire it. I salute you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for conversation today.